Now calling to the order the Thursday, February 23rd meeting of the Mashpee Sewer Commission. We're at Town Hall, Wacoit Meeting Room. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could observe a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Is there any business in the audience before we get into our meeting that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll roll into our discussion of our minutes. We have the approval, first up, of January 30th, the betterment hearing at Summerwood. Does anyone have any changes, comments, or a motion?
I move it approved as published.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meredith, was that an aye?
Aye, yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, aye.
Next is the February 9th, 2023 Sewer Commission meeting minutes. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Very good, unanimous. February 16th, meeting minutes of betterment for hearing for Sea Oaks. Any questions on that?
I move it approved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Unanimous. All right, old business, plan and delegate responsibilities to improve the fact visibility on the Mashpee Town website and post notice letters. One thing I have done along these lines is quite a while back, I was approached by Mr. Chris Ball of Mashpee TV about getting a video together that can be a one continuous video, but we also had a suggestion from the Mashpee Enterprise to also segment that into shorter videos that could be 3 to 5 minutes per topic. So we've discussed that. I'm working on an outline that I'll bring before the committee for exactly that kind of show, and we'll be able to generate web content with that. The other things that we're looking for are, will be some individuals to read the Q&A session. It doesn't have to be scary, there is a teleprompter. And we will be coming to the commission with some more details soon. Now, the main reason this came up was because we did have a curated, finished, and published frequently asked questions session, but we need to get them more visible on the town website. Catherine, you had expressed some interest, so I'll let you.
Yeah, I've been cognizant of this for a little while. As I was, putting them together, I was concerned that they might not be visible and where they would be posted. But we wanted to get them posted. My overall sense is that the town of Mashpee is the official source for information about the sewer project. And for over 15 years, the town and town leadership and a lot of people have really cared about this topic and wanted to do something with it. And the sewer project is the outcome of all those efforts. And having information difficult to locate makes it look like it's not as important. I would like to see it more visible and reflect the importance that the town and this commission and others see it as. And to do something on the main page of the Mashpee website, which is an official source of information for the town. To me, that is the source of information and precedes all others. But having hidden information is not good for the community, it's not good for the commission, it's not good for the town, and visitors to the town. So I met with Ray a couple of times and with the director of IT to understand the limitations of the website, which I explained in an email earlier. But the important thing to recall is that not these boards, committees, and commissions don't necessarily have an employee with access to the website to do anything with the website. And very few are available to do that. And Ray was assigning website assistance to a part-time employee in planning until she left, and that budget is no longer there to support that employee. So I'm thinking, well, we need to take this to the level it needs. I'd like to see if we can form a small working group within the sewer commission, but not necessarily limited to the sewer commission, that could look at this particular project and see how we can make it more visible. I would start by pulling up the website. Could you pull it up really quick?
You're going to need to be next to a mic so we can hear you.
I just want to put it up there, if we could. If you're probably all familiar with the website. Hopefully you are. But on the main page, there is 4 small tabs. There's a news tab, a clean water tab, a town meeting, a town schedule tab, and a meetings tab. I think it may be possible to insert a new tab for sewer project, and I would like to have us think about doing and see if it's feasible. Discussions with IT led me to think that that might be possible, but would have to be discussed with other management in town. But if you scroll down, you'll see the news tab, the clean water tab, the community tab, and the meetings tab. If we could add a tab, perhaps next to clean water, which is an important and relevant topic, we could include a link. You want to open the clean water tab? Is it possible? There's a list of things in here that are all in there. You could actually establish a link to the sewer commission right there, and you wouldn't have to go through it, find it elsewhere. And you could have a project summary. You could have a timeline at some point, and some easily understandable maps, the facts clearly evident and dated, letters that are posted to residents, the link to the sewer commission, and perhaps a link to the video clips that are created. You could also have other outreach videos or other outreach items posted. We could even include a link to the meeting minutes. The point is this would be immediately available. It wouldn't be 4 or 5 links buried in, and people would get lost. Another option, there's a Discover. If you scroll back up, Ray, bother you. Scroll back up, you'd see the Discover Mashpee site, Mashpee link over there on the left. I'm thinking that you could have the sewer project tab in there too, on the left.
Both places.
Say up both places. But if you end up going to the sewer commission page, there's opportunities for improvement here too. Like I think it's under the sewer commission reports and SOPs. They have SOP 1 and SOP 2, but they're not titled. It would the first one is for grinder pumps. The second one is for the collection system options. And anything else we post should have at least a minimal title that informs people about what that SOP or what that document is. So those are minimum efforts. I'd like to see photos of the sewer project. I'd like to see other things. But I think a working group could take on that and spit out, recommendations for this commission to agree on, and then talk to Ray about getting his approval, and then prepare something for the help desk to institute. We could also talk to Rodney, or, others that need to be informed. But the point is we need to move forward with this, and I would like to see if a working group is a good idea.
I think that is a good idea. One question I have for you, based on the information you just presented. We've got an emergency COVID update read.
Yeah.
Could we have possibly one of those that
That's another
says
good-
sewer, what you
it's-
need to know?
It's another good question, yeah. I think the point thing is to see if it's feasible. And I think things are feasible if we just put it out there and start asking, but we probably have to go to the manager, town manager,
Yeah.
and others.
Joe has a question.
Nothing's going to get done unless it gets started the way I'm going to suggest.
Okay,
You take all your thoughts that you've just presented now, and I think you're right on, I think, and I'm all for it. I'm going to, single criticism. Put it in writing, recommend it to the commission so we can vote on it line by line, assign responsibilities, asking Ray's help, asking the selectmen's help, whatever's necessary to get it done. But until we have a log, which is in the form of a written document from you, this isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
Could you do that for me and for us,
I
please?
can, yes,
Okay,
yes.
let's do it. And we'll get it on the agenda, and it'll get posted for next week, early, and we can fly.
Okay. Thanks.
I always found out until something was put in writing that other people could criticize, nothing would go forward. So you just have to have your strength of your convictions to take the first step.
I can do that.
And then when they hammer on you, good ideas will come up out of those hammer strokes. You would incorporate them, and then you'll move it forward even more,
Other-
Great, thank you.
Other discussion on the subcommittee for improving our IT outreach? All right, in that case, I will add this to an actual vote on the creation of the committee to be held next meeting, pending the review and receipt of the proposal by Catherine,
Working group.
working group.
We can't have a working group until we
Till we
vote
vote
on
on it.
ideas.
Yeah.
That'd just be a waste of time. That's putting the
Oh,
horses on the
absolutely.
wrong end of the cart.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. We have our project construction update from interim engineer, Mr. Rajak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
This is going to be relatively brief considering some of the presentations that I've given, especially the last one, so it won't be too bad. Can you hear me, Meredith? Okay.
Yes, I can, thank you.
And you can see this?
I can, yes, thank you.
I was surprised that I was able to get into the Mashpee website, jump back out, and get back into this. Okay.
Speedy Ray.
Okay, speaking of the maps, and I do agree with Catherine, this map is rather obscure. It's difficult to understand, difficult to read. The street names really don't become visible. So what I've asked EPG to do is to break this out into two maps, one being the northern area, which would be contract 2, and the southern area, which would be contract 3, and to break it out as a parcel map, such that you'll be able to see the individual parcels, and then they can be colored.
Make sure they do not highlight it, but they include Pirate Scope, because we're going to need this same map again. Pirates Cove is just the
Okay, you
lower
wanna
end
go
that's
further-
not highlighted.
You want to go further down on the southern section
You
then,
have
right?
to include Pirates Cove, because we're
Okay.
going to pick that sucker up next. and
Okay.
We'll have to do it all over again,
Okay,
but don't highlight it, that's
Okay.
all,
we can do that.
please.
So this is where we are now. So this is Route 28 going along here. So this area up here is the northern area. That's where I'll start. The yellow line shows mains that have already been installed. So you have Carlton from Ashers all the way to the end has been installed. This is Sewell Drive, and that's been installed. Over here, this little one doesn't have an edge line on it, that's Swain. That's been installed, and presently they are in Sea Oaks in this vicinity here right now. So this main is already in. They're working their way through that island area this week. So that's the northern area with respect to construction. I'll get into some of the details in a minute. Then we've got the southern area, which is south of 28 here. So it includes Quiniquisette, Orchard, Mashpee Neck Road, and this is Simon Narrows right here. So it's only about 1,100 feet of main installed on Simon's Narrows. So it's not all of Simon's Narrows. And you're looking at the terminus right here. That's where it stops. And the address is 225, I believe. But that main has been installed on Simon's Narrows up to Mashpee Neck. Then you have the Mashpee Neck main that they're working on now. During January, they had installed this section of main down here, just from Simon's Narrows up to the lift station. There's going to be a lift station right here where you see that black dot. So today, as of today, they're up on Ship's Anchor on Mashpee Neck Road. So they're roughly overall, I would say, 50-50 on what they've installed versus what they're going to be installing. But hopefully for the next update meeting that we have, you'll have 2 new maps to take a look at. So on the northern contract, the 12-inch main on Carlton from Ashers to the end is already installed. The connection for the plant was installed. Connection for Ashers Apartments was installed. The connection for Sea Oaks was installed, and then they went into Sea Oaks. Service connections on Carlton are complete. The 8-inch main on Swain's complete. The services on Swain's are complete. The 8-inch main on Sewell's complete, and the service connections are still working on. I think the service connections were complete, but right at the very end, there's a low pressure main that they're working on at the present time. For the southern contract, which is contract 3, they completed the main on Simon's Narrows, putting in a 12-inch main on Mashpee Neck Road. And the Simon, that goes from Simon's to the lift station. This picture right here is a picture of the lift station site. This was the site that was acquired from Willow Bend for the easement to put the lift station site on it. So for Carlton, this is just a couple of shots of the main going in, as well as the manholes. And on the main, you can see the green main, which is SDR 35, down at the bottom of the trench here. And then they're just installing that manhole on the right. That's the first leg of a manhole. There are multiple stages that go on top of that, depending on how deep the main is. Then for Mashpee Neck, we have 2 mains going in on Mashpee Neck. You're going to have you're going to have the collection main for gravity right here, and then this white main that you see adjacent to it is a force main that's going to come from the lift station, take the wastewater up Mashpee Neck Road. This other white item right here is a service connection, so that's the fitting that they put in the main whenever a service is going to go in. So as you can see, that's a permanent installation there. So it's important to know where that service connection is supposed to go. And then this was just another manhole installation. This was just a couple of pictures of the temporary paving on Sewell and what they have to do to avoid utilities. Here in this photo, you have the shoring on this side and then shoring on this side, and in between are the utilities. So this is a gas line going across the trench, and over here you see the blue mark and a little bit of the blue main. That's a water main going across this side. But that's typical of what they have to try to avoid when they're installing these mains. I know a lot of people think you just put that big shovel in the ground and keep on digging. It's not that quick. So here we are. You've seen these before. I'll run through them real quick. This is for the plant project, which is contract one. Original cost for the base bid was $27,905,000. The adjusted value includes the change order down at the bottom of $1,597,000, takes the cost up to $29,502. Completed is 4.3%, and the percentages that you'll always see on this are not based on time, they're based on value of the contract. So it's what's expended versus what the contract value is. And they should generally coincide. It's a soft curve going up. So started in October 3rd was the notice to proceed date. So it had 790 days for completion. There's 670 days remaining. Final completion's theoretically going to be December 1st. Startup is going to happen in advance of that. So contractually, you're looking at October 2nd. My hope is it's going to be before that. And we've already discussed the change order on it. So this is the cash flow chart. Three values up here. You have the original budget at 27.92, the adjusted budget with the change orders included, which is 2950, and then the actual expenditures based on the monthly payment requests that are made. As I mentioned before, these arcs should generally stay fairly close together. If they start to deviate too far, it usually indicates some sort of issue or problem. So on the north side, this is contract 2. Original value was $5,024,000. The adjusted value is the same because there were no change orders on it. Thus far, it's almost 20% complete, and you're really going to see that on the next slide since I mentioned about deviations from that curve. You'll see it on the next one. But so far, we paid almost 20% of the contract value, had 679 days for contract completion time, days remaining 559. Final completion for the northern area is going to be August 12th, and July 4th is going to be the actual main completion. And once again, the way they're moving on this, I expect this one to get done quicker than that as well. So here's the cash flow, and down here you see that there is a deviation from the other lines on the chart, but that's because they're working very quickly. So the quicker they work, the more money they spend, because they have to be able to order materials and supplies. So we pay for them as they arrive. And you drive around the site and you see a lot of manholes sitting around. They're not cheap, okay, but they're waiting to be installed. So that's why. The southern project starts at $9,806,000. The adjusted value is the same because there are no change orders on the contract yet. The amount completed based on value is 3.5%. $354,000 has been paid on it. Started has 790 days to completion, 670 days remaining. Final completion on this should be just like the plant, December 1st. The main completion is expected to go November 1st. And there's the chart. They're a little bit behind on this one. That's why the yellow line's below the other lines. So they got a slow start on that portion of the contract. So what you're looking at coming up at the Water Resource Recovery Facility, they're excavating for the process tanks and the process building, the foundations, as well as the underground piping. Logic says that piping has to put in when the concrete gets put in. For the northern area, the Sewell main, which is already complete, they did that during February, and the services were done as well during February. Next, they'll be going to Butler, and then ultimately they'll be going to Drew. The Sea Oaks main is where they're working right now. The Ashers main is one of the mains that they'll be going back to on Ashers Path. And then the Route 28 mains, which I'll be getting into in a minute. On the south side, Simon's Narrows services will have to be done later. The main is in, the services are not. Presently working on the Mashpee Neck Road main, and they'll stay on that until it gets all the way up to Quiniquisette. For DEP with the SRF, the zero interest determination was made by the state and approved in January of this year for the $54 million loan. The IUP, or intended use plan, draft plan, was released in December. Mashpee is on that list. This is the $12 million that was requested in order to complete the remaining items on the contracts. The final IUP list has not yet been released, and this is the first time that I've seen DEP not release it by January. It's almost always January. So I do have an email into the state to find out when they intend to release that. I think at this point, given that we're already through February, it becomes important because we have town meeting coming up. And that's why we need to know for the May town meeting article. And I think this is the big one of the day. So this is a detour for Route 28 for the work that's going to be done along Route 28. So we start with the work zone, which is about 1,200 feet, and it goes from the intersection at Orchard down to High Sachem Road. The lift station's going to be on the lower end of that blue circle there, down where it says road closed. That's where the lift station's going to go. So there's a short section of force main that will be installed coming out of where the lift station will be. And then the rest of it is going to be the transmission main for the service area. So this is talking about a shutdown of that section of road as opposed to trying to maintain one lane of traffic. So down on the lower left, you can see where if you're going eastbound, the traffic's going to be detoured on the Quiniquisette. So everybody would have to turn right at that intersection there. Then they would go down Quiniquisette. They would make a left on the Orchard, go up Orchard back to 28, and then make a right to go on their way if they're going eastbound. Then for the westbound traffic, they would start up here at Orchard. They would make a right onto Asher's Path and then continue down Asher's Path up to Meeting House, Old Meeting House, make a left on Old Meeting House, go back down to Route 28, and then make a right and continue on. Then you have, where'd it go? Okay, there it is. There are going to be message boards, the electronic message boards that you've seen in the past. One will be about 1.5 miles up from that intersection at Orchard, informing people that the road is closed to only those that are local. And then the same thing on the other side for the eastbound traffic, and that message board is going to be located down by the Rotary. The 3 blue triangles that you see are police details, so there will be an officer present at each of those intersections to make sure that the traffic flow is smooth. For what it's worth, this is much better than taking a road like Falmouth Road and trying to maintain one lane of traffic. All right. So on the surface, it sounds, I'm sorry.
Just finish your work on Orchard before you do this, or we'll just be turning one into another.
Yeah. This work is intended to start in April, at the beginning of April. And the duration of the permit that we're requesting on this is an 8-week permit, so it goes almost up to Memorial Day. However, the actual construction in that zone, I expect 4 weeks, outside 5 with that. One of the major reasons here is that you are dealing with other mains in the area. So south of this red line that you see, there is a reinforced concrete pipe drainage system there. On the north side over here, you have 2 mains, one being a water main and the other one being a 10-inch gas main on the north side. In that red zone along here are going to be 9 service connections made as well. All of those service connections happen to be on the north side as well. So overall, I expect this to be about 4 weeks, outside 5, as far as a time frame goes. It's necessary. It's the only time of the year that we can do it. It's not as though we can pick and choose when we want to do this. You can't do it in the summertime. And with respect to the winter, you can't do it when the hot mix plants are closed. So in this case, it means that they'll be able to restore the road on a daily basis, so it'll be open for traffic during the evening hours, so it's not a complete 24-hour closure, only during daytime hours. And,
Did you say the pipe would be basically on the north side,
I'm sorry,
north of the center line? The pipe
Center
we're
line.
putting in,
center line for the pipe
in the construction area?
in the construction area.
Would it be on the north side of the center line or right down the middle of the road? What are you looking at?
Center line, right down the middle of the road.
Okay.
And that was it.
Any chance we can adjust the speed limit on Quiniquisette down a little bit?
This is what?
Is it, Quiniquisette is a road where you intentionally are not allowed to turn right, so you have half the traffic from what it used to be, and therefore the speed limit's a little bit higher. Not that I live on it or anything, but my point is that if we're going to have increased traffic, is there a way to reduce the speed limit?
I can look into that. It seems logical under the circumstances, so logical and reasonable. For what it's worth, and I say this as a resident of the area, I would take a detour before I would ever sit in traffic on something like this. And everybody knows how to get around it anyway. All right? Those are the roads that you would normally use to try to get away from it. The main is deep. In one section, it's 17 feet deep. That means the trench width is a minimum of 8 feet in order to accommodate that. That makes it intrinsically a dangerous situation. So from a public perspective, it's safer for the police details, it's safer for the construction personnel, and it's definitely safer for the traveling public with respect to the vehicles themselves. Whether people admit it or not, even when you have a delay and you're going to try to maintain one lane of traffic, they're rubbernecking. As they go, they've got to see what's going on, and they're not watching the car in front of them, and that's when the accidents usually happen. All right, so I hate to see that. This is the best of all worlds as far as safety goes and minimizing delays.
Living on Quiniquisette, I completely agree with you. Another member
Yeah.
who,
Oh, I was just wondering, would you expect the job to be completed sooner when you actually have closed the road and they can work unimpeded versus having just one lane open and they're kind of restricted in their footprint in which they can work?
Yes, it is definitely going to be quicker than it normally would. If they try to if it was even possible to maintain traffic, you're looking at definitely going the full 8 weeks.
with potential accidents.
Can I just
Yes.
ask, how are Summerwood residents getting in?
How do the summer residents?
The Summerwood, the condo residents.
Summerwood condos.
Yeah.
Oh, Summerwood condos?
Access.
They will be able to keep their access. Believe it or not, what I need to work on now, and I'll be working with the Director of Public Works, Catherine, with respect to the kids for the school buses, all right? That's probably the biggest concern I have right now is making sure we get that taken care of.
Has the weather been at all a challenge yet?
No, not really. Fortunately, we've had I'm not going to say that. If I do say it, I'll jinx it. I know I will. Everybody understands, right?
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
yes.
Other questions for the town engineer and his report on construction?
We still don't have an idea of when the main reaches Mashpee Neck, where is it going to go from there?
I haven't looked that far ahead. There were certain exclusions within the contract that I have to look at first, okay?
No.
But I'll let you know.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions for the town manager from the audience? No? Hearing none, we shall move on to the discussion of the Sea Oaks Betterment hearing. I thought it went quite well, maybe not quite as flawless as our other meeting for Summerwood. There was concerns expressed. They have a very on-point homeowners association lead. She brought up some historical concerns that they've had dealing with both town and other departments, and to the point where other departments responded. So it was all in all, a good and thorough meeting. Obviously, we were here and approved the betterment in the same manner, and I think going forward, a lot of the concerns I hear were well addressed. I think what was the key sticking points is they're not connected to Mashpee Water yet, and that is a way we derive how we bill for their sewer. What goes in has to come out. So resolving that, I think, will be an ongoing discussion with them. And then anyone else have any comments to make about Mr. Lyons?
Yeah, there was one comment made, and I haven't had a chance to call Jill Campbell, but she made a comment to the effect that the Mashpee Water District, quote unquote, wasn't interested in working with them. That isn't the case. What the case is, they've been called in a number of times, and each time they've gone to different groups and different people in charge, and Jill was only there part of the time. And the situation is, they could definitely tie up with the Mashpee Water District if they want to. Then the cost question came up, and they asked for a quote from the water district. And the water district said, we can give you a quote, but you'll find out we're going to be much more expensive than doing it yourself because of the contracts that are implied or enforced on municipalities. All right? That was the negative answer that apparently Jill heard and said they don't want to work with us. They'll work with them. They'd be more than happy to work with them. And we had to get this on the public record because the people over at the Water District are very upset that they broke their back to give these people all the answers they needed. And then Jill, maybe just casually, without realizing what she was saying, made a comment that was not true. The Water District is more than willing to work with them, but they'll have to pay for the pipes going in just like they do with us because the town can't do it for nothing.
This reminds me of something you raised, Phyllis, is when we do discuss future improvements and infrastructure on private property, that in the beginning, most of us came into this commission when these things had already been discussed. But there is an option for private property to build the infrastructure themselves. Now, whether or not it comes out to a cheaper number than what the town can offer, that's their decisions to
Yeah.
make.
I've been talking to some people, and there seems to be certain things that can be built into when the town does the work versus private people doing the work. It's not just the going rate, the union rate for contracting. So it would be interesting to hear what the town can offer, say, going forward when you're talking about going into private property versus, so that you'd have a standard by which to judge other bids coming in that would be private.
We're done with private property improvements at this point for
Well, I'm
phase one.
thinking of
on private.
condos, when you're going in, down the road, yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's important. Thank you. Other questions? Comments on Sea Oaks? All right. Now we'll move to the interview of a Conservation Commissioner who I was pleased to be on that board, that committee with, Miss Erin Copeland. She's interested in joining the Sewer Commission. Erin, if you could come forward, say your name and speak your piece.
Thanks for having me. This is on? Okay.
You're on.
My name's Erin Copeland. I live at 1B Riverview Ave. As you know, I'm on the Conservation Commission. Thank you for having me. Did you want me to just make a little?
Yeah, talk about, the contents of your letter we've all gotten to see. If you'd like to speak to why you'd like to join, what you bring, and if you have any questions for us.
Well, my interest in joining the Sewer Commission is sort of twofold, personal and professional. I met my husband here about 17 years ago, and since then we wandered the New England earth for a while, and we're back. We came back about 4 years ago, and we're planted, and I promised my son, who's in the audience, that we're not moving again, because he's been in probably 4 or 5 different schools, so we're planted. So it's important for me to have a connection to the town. I grew up in Westchester County, New York. My parents sold the house there, 30 years ago, and it's been that long since I felt like I had a hometown, if you know what I mean. So that's primarily why I wanted to get involved with the Conservation Commission first, and then that experience naturally led me to the Sewer Commission, because as you know, a lot of the same issues, come up with conservation. And for me, in particular, it's important. I joined conservation because I'm a trail runner, and I run the woods, and it's part of my process. I'm a person in recovery, so it's part of what keeps me going in my journey. And so that's what inspired me to get onto the Conservation Commission. And as I said, it kind of led me here naturally. And in terms of professionally, as a realtor, we all talk about when we're showing houses, the sewer's coming, don't worry, the sewer's coming, and it's this mythical creature. And I'm not comfortable with not knowing the answers and just kind of saying things. So it's important to me to know what's happening specifically. And I want to educate myself as much as I possibly can, and the realtors, because I know that there's a lot of people in my business, which is a new business for me. I'm actually only 2 years into it, who don't have the information, who don't know how it works, who don't, understand the big picture. So that's another reason why I'm here. And, I want to, to Catherine's point about getting the information out there, I had to show a house on Mashpee Neck the other day, and the realtor said, it's on phase 1 of the sewer project, and I started to look for the maps and the information, and I went to the town website, and I saw that map that we said is a little clunky, and I thought, gosh, this is kind of hard, getting this information. So in that respect, I would also like to be part of the commission so that I can be not a representative, but somebody who can help the people in my business learn the facts and not communicate misinformation. And I think that's it. And to my other point of bringing my business into this is the Conservation Department is coming to my brokerage next week, because it's important for me to make sure the people in my business know about conservation and why that's important as well. We're not just here to make money as realtors. We're here to be, at least for me, I'm here to be responsible steward for the land, and that's it. Sorry, I just kind of trail on for a while.
That was great. Thank you, Erin.
So,
I think representation goes two ways. When you have someone who is in an industry that is directly correlated to the business of a board, you have someone whose input matters here, and then the commission has an ambassador out there. So I find that the diversity of any governing body is greatly increased when we look to that. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Erin? I'll entertain a motion we would be recommending her nomination to this committee to the Select Board.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
What we'll be doing now, unless I'm mistaken in the procedure, is we will recommend to the Select Board. They will vote at a Select Board meeting, and then you may have to come before them to do this again,
okay.
and then you'll be on the seat.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
I really
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
participation.
Thanks.
All right, at this point, we reserve this time for additional topics that members might have brought up, members of the audience have brought up, or your chairman forgot to get on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to put before the commission the possibility to invite our plumbing inspector to come in and talk with the board, because he's going to be involved in this project, and so far we haven't heard from him. And I think there are some questions we can anticipate asking, like, I've talked with him, and he was involved with the Falmouth Sewer Service and lift stations. And so having that knowledge, we could ask him what problems and issues should the Sewer Commission be proactive in addressing. We could also ask him what he would recommend the commission take to help our residents in locating their proposed sewer services stake and to help reduce resident concerns and cost. And the town plumbing inspector, they set in place requirements to permit and install the sewer service and lift stations. What's that about? And I want to make sure that he's interacting with Ray Jacks, definitely. I guess most of all, I want to see how he fits into the overall picture, because Ray Jack is absolutely concerned with what the town is involved in. But for the homeowners that are in that Phase 1 project, we've got a responsibility, and it's going to interact with the plumbing inspector, and I want to have a really good, solid overview of what that is, how it impacts with plumbers and the service connections and the laterals, and where the interface happens. So I would like to make a motion that this commission invite our Mashpee plumbing inspector, Kevin, to the next meeting.
All right, discussion. Very good. Before we take a vote, I'd like to ask a question and see how you feel about this. You've already generated a pretty great outline of questions that we can pose to him. How do you feel about us as a commission seeing if we want to add any more questions and then giving them to him well ahead of time so we can
Yes,
respond?
this was just a suggestion.
Great.
Not limited,
All
absolutely.
right, we have a motion that is seconded. Do you have any comment, Mr. Rajak?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think it's going to be very beneficial for the commissioners. I've spoken with Kevin before about a number of different things, and he's very knowledgeable, okay? So I have the utmost respect for him. I would say he's probably going to be cautious on what he may be able to recommend, all right, as am I, as are you. So just try to keep that in mind, that he's not going to have the answer for everything, but he's very good, so.
Thank you.
Good to know.
So we have a seconded motion to request that our town plumbing inspector come before this commission. If there's no further discussion or any commentary from the audience, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
We didn't put a timeline down.
We did not put a timeline down. Should we?
Check availability.
Check
The motion
availability.
included inviting him to our next meeting. Is that what you want?
Next meeting, maybe if we can get that.
Well, that's what the motion is.
That
so
was-
Right,
straighten
that
out.
was the motion. Do we feel we can responsibly get those questions turned around in
I
time
think
so
so.
he can respond?
Yeah.
All right, the motion as is, unanimous, and we will request that he come to our next meeting.
I do have a question for Ray Jack about the green stakes going in.
Fire away.
Okay. I was visiting on Simon's Narrows about a week ago, maybe a little bit more, and noticed one home with, let's see, a blue stake, a green stake, and a yellow stake, and they were all pretty much compacted. And I met the site coordinator, I think his name is Brian.
Brian,
Right.
yes.
And we went back and we looked at it, and he's explaining everything. And they're very cautious about landscaping and trees and shrubs and bushes. And they're packed within that 10 feet, and he's explaining the different levels. They'll probably be able to do things all right. But then I noticed over on the side, what happened was all the utilities swept from left to right in front of the house, going the whole distance in front of the house instead of straight in from the street. And there was a slight berm to the right side of the street, of the property, in which there was a scrub pine and there were some forsythia bushes. And I'm thinking, if this is me and I'm a owner, I'm going, take the tree out, take forsythia bushes out, no problem, just go straight in. Are they actually contacting the homeowners to see if that option is available for them? And what if the homeowner is in Florida, or they were only here part-time of the year? How is that handled?
We are not, the town is not actively engaging homeowners. They will answer questions on the job site, but their role, primary role, is to protect the town's interests. The one thing that I will say, because I've said it on behalf of myself, that I will not make any recommendations to anybody about any of that. And nor is that on-site engineer. They're not allowed to either. They can try to help people to some degree, but they can't make recommendations for them. Otherwise, then the very next thing that happens is, he told me. And now it's on the town, because they're representing the town. So the firm, as well as the town, gets sucked into whatever the issue may be. I don't know what to say about anyone who may be out of town, but I would have to presume that anybody in the sewer service area right now that is out of town, in one way, shape, or form, has been made aware of it, I would think. Okay, and then, obviously, that's not a guarantee, okay, but nonetheless,
Everyone has received notices prior. Everyone's been subject to the outreach and the continuing and hopefully improving outreach of us, so I would tend to agree.
yeah. I mean, I made sure that a letter went out to every owner that was involved in this, and there were quite a few. And then we had the public hearing. I don't expect everybody to come to that hearing by any stretch. But with that letter, they were informed that they're included, and my name's on there so they can get a hold of me if they have any questions. And I fielded, a fair amount of questions over the last several months on this, so.
And
And there
Commissioner,
hasn't been anything we couldn't resolve.
excellent. Commissioner Sprout's given me a great opportunity to reiterate my favorite subject. I say that tongue-in-cheek, is that the reason we can't give an estimate for or give even a range for the cost of hooking up to the sewer is that just as she's presented, every case is so very different. So you can't generalize for quote-unquote the average home. I'm going to have a great time doing it. It's going to go right down my driveway that's unpaved. It's going to be easy for me. My neighbor, not so much. He has a lot of infrastructure in front of his home that he would have to cut through, including a well-paved, recently paved driveway. So I like him. I'm going to give him an easement on my property so that he can run the line down if that's the best option. So every situation is going to be unique. Ms. Sprout and her farm has a very unique situation, and it's as different as it gets from property to property. So we're not being shady or tongue-in-cheek. We just can't honestly give a range for the connection costs. And I understand that many find that unsettling. Other questions?
Not another question, but a new subject for our future meetings. And that is, how are we going to fill out line, L-I-N-E, 1 in the transfer station? At the moment, we've got 429 potential units going over the processing equipment. That's a little less than half of the volume of that cleanup or filtration line. So we need to pick off another 500 units to plan on piping into that unit. And that means a little more collection. The original plan included the bottom half of, I forgot the name of the road, but Pirates Cove, the extension into Pirates Cove. And Pirates Cove has somewhere, I don't know, around 90 units in it. So we still need to pick up another 400 and some units. And there are a couple of places to do that are good low-hanging fruit, and I've brought them up before, but we've got to get them discussed.
Are you discussing in a change order to Phase 1 or early in Phase 2?
Neither of those descriptions. It's not a change order, okay? What it is where are we going to get the rest of the water we need to feed line 1? We can choose anywhere we want, quite frankly.
a plan?
But now, wait a minute, we're gonna need the money to put the pipes in the ground, so we have to go to the town. So what we gotta do is say, okay, we wanna do ABC. Excuse me, but somebody's already called that ABC. One of the selectmen came up with a plan of 4 places up north around the ponds. Maybe we'll stay there, but it doesn't make sense from a chemist or mechanical point of view, as far as I'm concerned, because that won't help the quality of the freshwater ponds, which it was intended to do. It would only give us the sewerage, but we can get that sewerage cheaper down here, closer to the plant. And if we do that, then we're gonna have more impact sooner to the river. And we're gonna be setting a great example for the state of Massachusetts to point down here and say, look at Mashpee, they're 1/3 of the way on their way of cleaning up the river. all right? So what we've got to do is decide what areas we want the waste coming from to fill out line 1 in the plan. What's already there, the equipment's all paid for. The thing that isn't is the collection. And deciding where we're going to collect next. So I'd like to have that as an article to discuss in future meetings.
So you're proposing an intermediate construction phase to grab high-value targets.
Not intermediate, the next area.
I'm talking in between Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Which phase 2? Now we get into garbage. I don't want to go there and get lost in language again.
Okay.
Phase 2 has nothing to do with the ponds. Phase 2 in the master plan, which was approved by everybody, has nothing to do with fixing the problems up at Centuit.
And you're,
Okay? Phase 2 were the words, unfortunately, that Andy used instead of saying alternate Phase 2 or some other definition. Phase 2 in this book says, do what I'm saying we should be doing. Pick up Pirates Cove and pick up the low-lying fruit on the river. And we have one line that we paid for, and it's going into the plant now, that has the space in it to take that fluid and process it. So my point is, we have to say yes, so Ray can work with the engineers in the cost that we need to come up with to put the pipes in the ground, and the timing for the town meeting and all of the other paraphernalia that requires our attention.
questions and comments from our commissioners?
So we need money to get to any kind of engineering design phase, right? So,
Hold on, don't go throwing fancy words around again. I know you have a great command of the language. More pipe in the ground, the answer is yes.
we need more money.
Any new pipe,
But what,
we
but
need
we're,
additional money.
but we're waiting on the notice of change order that Ray's requested from the
Change order was
state.
to make sure the plant could handle more volume, because we got shortchanged in the original layout of the plant, in the fact that we couldn't get enough money to do it right the first time. So we put in what we could get, and then we went back and asked for a change order to get the other 12 million to put all the tanks in. So now we have a plant that we have some excess capacity on line 1 that we should fill out before we go and ask for money to fill line 2 and 3 and 4, which will also require money for to get the equipment and put more pipe in the ground. So you call it phase 2? I don't know, then we have 3 phase 2s.
Are you equating phase 2 with line 2? Just- Okay.
I'm saying we got to fill line 1, which is sitting there half empty because nobody put in enough pipe in the ground to feed it.
So
The original requisition.
to reiterate, for, convenience of viewers and people looking into this, Phase 1 is the construction of our plant, a fully online plant that is able to handle the majority of the load we're going to put on it and within the scope of this project. And that cost a lot of the money for Phase 1 to build that plant, because coming back later to add more capacity to this plant would have caused re-excavations and cost the town a lot of money it didn't need to spend. So the plan for this, the summary, is the construction of a fully functioning plant that leaves only enough funding for about 500 dwellings. That's, as Commissioner Lyons has pointed out, less than 50% of the capacity of a single line. The plant has 4?
Will have 4.
Will have
They all
4.
have to be financed as well.
And so the position we're in now is, do we look at and it makes sense to me, do we look at a way to go after more amounts of houses that are closer together and within the environmental area that we're concerned about, which is the Mashpee River? My question for Mr. Rajak, procedurally, is this something we discuss first, identify what properties would like to target, and then turn back to the town for a proposal and quote?
Here's where you are. And as Mr. Lyons indicated, the original 2015 plan, 5 phases. You're into phase 1. There are clear lines of demarcation for each of the subsequent 4 phases in that plan. But as also part of that plan, overall, the state approval for it mandates that once you enter a phase, which we have, phase 1, you are required to reevaluate all of your prior assumptions. So one of the biggest is shellfish propagation. What's the efficacy of the shellfish propagation program? What should happen going forward with that? Should there be any changes? The level of wastewater was directly linked to that program. So all of those phases came about as a result. Each of those phases would now be looked at and revisited with respect to should any changes occur. And the commission had voted to move forward, at least for the present time, with a alternative phase 2, which included subphases. The first of those subphases, and I think that this is important for everybody to think about, the first component of those subphases, let's say 2A, is doing nearly what Mr. Lyons is talking about. It's going south. It's picking up the system from where we are now, meaning Simon's Narrows area, Mashpee Neck Road, and it's going south. So it would include Pirates Cove. The only other question then is Great Neck, all right? What's going to happen in that geographic area? And all of that can and should be decided this year, all right? Now, timeline-wise, I was hoping to have some information for you at this meeting, but it didn't quite pan out. But by the next meeting, you will have more information on what the engineer's review of the original phase 1 phasing, along with the suggested alternate phase 2 phasing, because I did ask them to incorporate that in all their evaluations. They will be able to bring that back to the commission soon to start having those discussions. Why? The notice of project change that Catherine was talking about is basically going to conclude at the end of this year. And at that point, that's when you start seeking funding. You need to have that plan by then, all right? The presumption is then you can go into Springtown meeting suggesting and requesting design funding for where you might want to go next. That has to happen first. SRF does not fund design, all right? So for an SRF application to even occur, you need to have something in the oven. And their measure of how serious you are is if you didn't bother funding design, then you're not that serious about the issue. And that makes sense, quite frankly, because it's a very competitive program at the state level. So those are kind of the steps that during the course of this year, and I expect during the course of this summer, you will probably conclude where you want to go based on the information the engineers come back with, on phasing options, okay? And I think you'll have a pretty good plan, pretty good understanding of it, that no doubt in my mind by the end of the year, you'll be ready for 2 things. Town meeting for any kind of design that you want to talk about, as well as an idea of when, maybe for SRF funding. And third, and probably most importantly, is a state permit. And that town's got to make a decision whether they want option A or option B. Option A is everybody gets a new IA system within 5 years. Option B, the watershed permit. This notice of project change isn't going to satisfy the watershed permit, but it will lead into the watershed permit process, okay? And so as I look into that little crystal ball, I see a lot of all of this happening this year before the year is out. And specifically, I think that by this summer, you're going to have some good discussions on it and the information to facilitate that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
Questions for Mr. Rajak? All right, in that case, I will put on the meeting, if there's no objections, our next meeting to discuss the next phase, the next, where we go from here, and this entire process, and to figure out where we want to go so we can know what to ask for. Mr. Mr. Lyons.
Keep in mind that what we're trying to do is fill the existing plant. And the problem we have is we have to hook up 500 more users, and we don't have the pipes in the ground for 500 more users on any approved plan yet. So what we as a group have to do is decide what 500 users are we going to recommend that Ray works with our engineering staff to come up with prices that then we can submit through the town processes for approval, so we can finish the line 1 in the transfer station.
Joe, you have brought up Pirates Cove, but a couple of months ago, just to meet the budget and the overruns that were happening, I know we took out several streets, such as Brewster Road, Strawberry Lane, Truro Road, which are all across the street. They're all on quarter-acre lots. Now, some of that development, because it lines Quiniquisette Avenue, is already being done, but it's fairly densely populated in the back. Because it's already been planned, is that something that we should be looking at, things that we took out of the plan and then bring back it in?
That was the primary purpose of the 12 million coming in front of SRF, was to be able to finish this project the way it was intended, the way you intended it, which includes those roads. Collectively, if my memory serves me correct, of the 400-plus properties in Phase 1, 100 of them represent those roads. So literally, 25% of the capacity and customer base, all right, is gone without them. So it would be my recommendation to you to include that. That was what the 12 million was intended to facilitate. My hope is that that will pass town meeting. If it does, and you approve it, we will get that done as part of this, part of Phase 1. I know Mr. Lyons is talking about total capacity of the 400-plus homes that we're doing now equals 50% of the capacity of Line 1, okay, or process tanks. And then the total capacity of the plant in the end is 480,000 gallons, okay, when all of the lines are,
Oh, it's 4 times that. Oh, sorry, you're right, 480 total, it's 120 now.
Correct.
That we've only filled about half of the
Right.
120.
correct.
Always hitting us with the math quiz, Joe.
58,000 gallons is what we've done, yeah.
Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well, I think I'm repeating myself here, but I'll put on the agenda discussion of next phase for our next meeting. All right, is there any discussion before we end any discussion from the audience?
One clarification on the questions for the plumbing inspector. I think if we have them, we should all send them to you so that you can collect them.
I'm heading back to Louisiana tomorrow, so we should probably designate another person.
Why don't you draft what you're talking about
She did.
in writing?
Yeah.
She has a
It is-
draft.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll vote on that next meeting.
We can add to it. All right.
Yeah, if you could send that around to the commission members, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to thank our commissioners, our secretary, Mr. Ray Jack, and Mashpee TV, and the Enterprise. Thank you for coming, everyone. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, now voting. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Very good.